Welcome to Creatives in Quarantine. I'm Tiwana Floyd, your host. This week, I speak with singer-songwriter TertulienThomas, who went from church famous to Juilliard training to a #1 single on TraxSource, and the spiritual warfare that almost had him quit singing altogether. Here's Tertulien.
I always love when we get together because we always do something good.
I know, because we silly.
Yeah, we are. We are.
Oh,
Never grow.
Welcome to TertulienThomas.
Thank you, Tiwana.
All right, so, oh my goodness. We be creating, we just be creating. I know you as a singer. We met, okay, let me tell this story first.
Okay.
Of course, we met in the Agape choir, but I saw you around Agape. And I would see this dude with this long hair, reminding me of Nick Ashford, all tall and lean, looking like Black Jesus. And I would always be like, who's that guy? But you weren't in the choir yet. I think you were helping with the kids or something.
I think, this was when I was involved with Nam Yoga, and sometimes like Karen would do something with the kids, but I was coming in with the yoga community before.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, who's that dude? Like, I was talking to Stacy, and the day that she joined the choir, we just happened to sit next to each other, and you know how we have to turn to each other and say, you are wonderful and all the things.
Yeah.
So we did that and then said, have a great day. And then she came to choir rehearsal to audition. So it's like I saw you around Agape, and then next thing I knew, you was joining the choir, and then we made friends because I was like, I'm gonna be friends with him.
That's right. Yeah, and then we found out we had the whole East Coast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
The whole East Coast vibe.
That's right.
And I could have sworn I may have run into you at wherever. Were you at Bergdorf's?
Yeah.
Yeah. I may have seen you in New York years ago and just passing through Bergdorf's. You know?
Yeah, there's so many people. There was one girl, I used to be a roommate with her, but I met her here. And when we started talking about our trajectory and our journey back on the East Coast, I'm like, we probably sat on the train next to each other. Yep. It's just familiar air and just not knowing where.
Yeah, because I felt that about you when we first met. I'm like, something familiar about this sister. I'm like, I don't know what, and I found out, you know?
Exactly. And so I know you to be a singer, songwriter. Add your other hyphenates because there may be some I don't know about.
Well, singer, songwriter, actor, realtor. I do real estate too. So Yeah. I did some modeling, here and there, but I think that the acting and the singing are more on the forefront.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And real estate, I kind of always had a knack for. I think living in Connecticut and driving through those, by those
beautiful
homes all the time, you're like, ooh, And I think it came when my parents moved down to Georgia back in 2005. They wanted to retire and relocate. And because of the language barrier, I wanted to make sure that, they found a good agent and that, they weren't taken advantage of. And so I kind of stepped in and realized I had a knack for real estate. So I kind of handled everything myself and, helped them sell the Connecticut home and then bought the Georgia home. And so that's kind of when that bug started.
Wow. And when you say language barrier, what do you mean by that?
So I'm Haitian. So Creole, ça passe. Creole is my first language, actually, even though I'm born in the States. But Creole is, Haitian Creole is my first language, and then English. So I speak Creole with my parents, even though, they've been here since the early 70s, but their accents were, as thick as you've met my mom. Yeah. And the English is there, but, sometimes like some complicated words, they'd be like, what? So I would always have to be there to translate sometimes. So not sometimes, child, all the time.
all the
That's
time.
the job of a Haitian kid with a Haitian parent.
Yeah,
You
I
are
think
employed
any
for life.
for life, right? And I think that's any immigrant, especially from that time where there's so many, whether someone is Russian or Italian or
Right.
from Cuba, whatever, that age range, a lot of people just chose. I had an Egyptian boyfriend whose mother chose not to learn the English,
Yeah.
to learn English. So I think there's something about that time frame of baby boomers where they're like, nope, this
Yep.
is the language I speak. Well, I'll
This is
figure it out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of braveness and there's a lot of courageousness in being able to come to another country and just deciding I'm going to speak my fluent language
Yeah.
and life will work as it will.
And make it work. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
that kind of knowing,
Mm-hmm.
of just trusting that you'll work it out, and you know,
Yeah.
so
So
yeah,
you talked about having to help the parents with sell the Connecticut home, then buying
yeah,
the Atlanta home, and then that's when
yeah,
you found that you had a little niche. And that reminds me of the first car that I bought was in 1991. I just got my driver's license, and a girl that I worked with was going to go get a car, and she was like, "Oh, since we both just got our licenses, do you want to get a car and maybe we can get a deal for two?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so
right,
she went and handled everything. I had no idea what that whole process was. So
right.
then when it came for my second car, I read the book, How to Buy a Car for Dummies. And people were laughing at me, but I bought my car by fax.
There you
I
go.
sent, and one of the tips in there was like, just send a fax. And I sent the fax and was like, these are all the things that I want, and this is what I want to pay. And then in Connecticut, as a matter of fact, in Fairfield, Connecticut,
Oh,
picked up my Volkswagen, signed the papers, got what I wanted, and that was it.
and that was it. It was done.
That was
Done
it, yeah.
deal.
Right.
Wow.
But I
Wow.
don't know if I have a knack for that to continue with it as you do with realty.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does take a knack and
And
a
a love.
tenacity and a love, yeah, to
Yeah.
handle all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Also too, I think the real estate stuff comes from mom, because I'm not that I recently learned this, but I always kind of knew that mom dabbled in real estate in Haiti for a little bit, and actually that is what opened her pathway to enter the United States, was leaving the village and going to Port-au-Prince and buying this little home and that little home, and like,
Mm-hmm.
mom was kind of like the Airbnb queen before Airbnb
Oh,
even,
I'm
like,
not surprised. That's a
you know
Sagittarius. They have vision.
yes, very
Mm-hmm.
much, very, very much. So yeah, so that's how she got here, and she would always talk about that and talk about houses and that kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe just always talking about that put a bug in my ear, and here we
Yeah.
are. I'm licensed.
Right. Right. Planting
Yeah,
a seed.
yeah.
So then in regards to singing, when did you first realize that you can sing and sing well? Or did you
Um,
not, was it like, I can sing, I don't know about well, and then you grew into it? What was your trajectory to
I
recognizing your
knew,
voice?
like, I was always exposed to music so very early on. I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, the knowing that I could sing, probably sometime around 15. I was
Mm-hmm.
auditioning for musical theater in high school.
Okay.
And like, I always sang in church, like kids choir, little things growing up in church, but it was never like soloist,
Mm-hmm.
and I auditioned for this musical. I think the musical was Bells Are Ringing or something like that, if I remember correctly. I'm going back like 92.
Right. Yeah.
1992. And there was a Tom Jones songbook that I had found at like a vintage music shop store in Ansonia, Connecticut, because our church was in Ansonia at the time. And so
Mm-hmm.
we popped in there and found some stuff for the church. And I saw the songbook. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that. And I loved Tom Jones. And
Yeah.
there was the song Yesterday by the Beatles was in there. And I'm like, why is, my teenage self, why is there a Beatles song in a Tom Jones book? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at this, and at that time I was able to read sheet music. So I was like reading it. I'm like, okay, I got this. So I go to the audition and I sing, and this out of nowhere, Tiwana, this big voice just came through me that day. And I'm like, what?
It's startling.
It was very startling. It's very, very, very startling. And everyone in the room was like, whoa, like, what? You can sing like that? I'm like, me? Yeah, I guess. Not fully understanding what had happened and what was happening. Mm-hmm. And then, like, I discovered the voice then, and then transferred it. Once that transferred into church, it was a wrap. Praise and worship, the choir. At this point now, I'm like singing in all the services. I'm leading worship service now. And at this point, I'm 15, 16 years old, leading praise and worship in all of the services. And when there were like fellowships and conventions with other churches, like I was there. I could say I was church famous for a bit.
Not ghetto famous, but church famous.
I was church famous, yes. And not even trying to be. It's just that the songs were so, and in Creole too, they were so like, just very, very like slow and melancholy and not much to things. And as you know, the church is very strict and stringent on what type of music, when you're going to Pentecostal extremists, even the style of worship music is controlled, and what you wear is controlled, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I was trying to bring like new life to the hymns and new life to the songs, and like starting a youth choir with the fellow youth of my time, and like taking gospel songs and creating fusions and that kind of thing. And it was fun when it lasted, but child, I received a lot of opposition.
Yeah.
For doing that kind of stuff. But, I loved it. I loved it. I needed to bring some spice in my life because there was too much strictness. There was too much confinement. There was too much being placed in a box. And so I needed, while I was in the box, I was trying to either get out or at least have some fun while I was inside.
Yeah, because I didn't know you back then, but when I see, when you post TBT pictures and, Flashback Friday photos, I'm like, this dude was pretty much now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, you had a broad personality way back in the day. Now, did you recognize that you had a big personality back then, or were you just being yourself? Because being in Connecticut can also be refined and changed.
I know I definitely was being myself. And as I got older, it felt like I was a big fish in a small pond, so to speak. Because I started to realize like, I'm not like everybody. I stick out like a sore thumb. I was trying to blend in. And even though I had aspirations to stick out and to lead and to do this, but I was trying to water all of that down, like because of the upbringing in the church. And, you gotta tone it down. You gotta, you can't do this and you can't do that. So I was trying those things, but whatever was happening inside was like, you
I didn't come here to be that.
Burst out. Yeah.
So you said that you, at this time with the Tom Jones music, you were already reading music.
Yes.
So then when did you start reading music? Was that in church?
That was partially church and partially music. Because in school, I was taking a music theory class. In high school. So in private school, you have the mandatory classes to take, but then there's like a slew of electives that you can take. And a lot of my electives were artistic electives and centered around music and concert choir, jazz band, music theory. That was it for me. So I had the music theory background, and then in church at the time, we had just started an orchestra, and there was an orchestral band that had just started, and we had a music conductor come and pretty much teach us how to like read sheet music. Like I think it was like every Tuesday and Saturday was the rehearsal at the church. So I had a lot of music education very early on. I think, gosh, my first instrument that I picked up, I was probably 10. My dad loved to watch like a lot of classical music, so he's like, "You're gonna learn violin," but I'm like, but I don't, I don't wanna. So, so at 10 years old, like I'm in my first violin lesson, and the teacher's like, "Okay, sit up straight." So with the violin, you gotta like sit at the edge of the seat, and then you gotta hold the violin, and the freaking thing is underneath your chin. The shit hurt. You're 10 years old. It hurts.
Right. Especially if it's not, because it's a beautiful instrument, but if it's not what you don't want to do, then
right,
you care.
right.
How it
So
sounds.
I kicked that to the curb, and then picked up guitar, played with that a little bit, but piano was really what I wanted to learn. So I learned that. And then once I discovered my voice, it was a wrap. I had played, after piano, I had played soprano sax. I played bari sax.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, this was all church stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I played in the band for years, and then again, once I found my voice, it was done. It was done. I put all instruments aside, and this was considered my instrument.
Wow.
So yeah.
So then at what point did you start putting pen to page and penning some lyrics?
Oh my.
That's a whole other
probably
count.
I would say early on around that time too, because singing in the church allowed me to create little chants for service. There was also, because I was bringing in other gospel music and other songs, I would take the English songs and translate them into Creole. So that allowed me to be in sort of the songwriting format and to be able to write stuff. But I didn't really start writing music up until, I would say probably 2014. Because because there was a big space where I had stopped. Once I left the church, I stopped singing completely. I had stopped. Okay. I was done. Done.
Why did you stop? Was it like a punishment that, why did you stop singing?
It was leaving the church was one, because I was experiencing a lot of spiritual warfare. There was just a lot of tyranny and drama in the church, and the feeling of being controlled all the time, I could no longer handle. So I broke out. And with that breaking out there was a lot of church hurt that came with that. And part of that church hurt was the not being able to sing the way that I wanted to. Again, the controlling aspect. Like, there was a space I did want to sing professionally. There was almost an opportunity to do professional, like, Haitian gospel music. And even that, they were like, "No, you can't do that." And that guy was a jerk anyway. But it was all of this control. So once I was done, I said goodbye to everything. I didn't want to sing anymore. I also was aware of what was going on in the music industry, and that turned me off.
Understood.
And I was just like, I'm done. Like, I'll sing in the shower, I'll sing in the car, I'll sing at somebody's birthday, but I'm good. I'm good. It wasn't until I came here in 2011, and there's something about leaving everything behind, leaving friends, leaving home, and coming to a place where you know no one, and it's literally you and God.
And you can recreate yourself.
You can recreate yourself.
Being the person that you truly are inside.
Right. You find yourself. Exactly. So I had a lot of those moments where a lot of self-reflection, a lot of reliving, or not reliving, but reviewing the past of, all those years of being controlled and being in these controlled environments. I'm now out of it on my own, new state, new, everything new.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until like in my sort of like seeking spiritual alignment and growing spiritually that I came across someone who is a clairvoyant and who's now a very dear friend of mine that said to me, she's like, Spirit says you need to sing. And I was like, and I, at that point, I didn't tell anyone. I kept having these recurring dreams about singing on stage and singing in front of crowds of people. Like the dreams were there, but I just wasn't listening to them. I wasn't paying attention to them because I had said goodbye to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kept saying it to me and saying it to me. And Agape now at this point had come around again for me. Because when I had first moved here, everyone's like, oh, you should go to Agape and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, I did. I went. I didn't like it.
That was my first experience as well.
Yeah, I didn't like it because I was so Pentecostal when I got here.
I was so Baptist.
Ooh, child, I was so churchy. I was so like, you know, like if I go to service and they ain't no hooting and hollering and or a verse Bible not open it up, I didn't feel like I was satisfied.
Right.
And I was like, but when I went there, I'm like, I feel the love here. And I was like, God, if it's your will for me to come back, you bring me back.
I said the same thing.
Yeah. So I left.
Yeah.
I left. That was 2012. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm back again through the yoga, through the, you know, readings and going to this clairvoyant and that one and like trying to understand what the heck is going on with my life. And the messages are coming in. And when I went to Agape the second time and I showed up on a choir Sunday, I was floored.
Yeah.
Floored. You know, the whole boo-boo, the whole Holy Ghost experience that I was
gotcha.
You know.
Gotcha in the fields.
It caught me up in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna sing in that choir.
Yeah.
And then boom, a year later, you know, 2015, here we are.
Yeah.
You know, 5 years later.
Right. We have a similar trajectory with that because when my first time to Agape, I went with a group of friends who were regulars there. And this is like when they had the 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. and the 11 a.m. And it was shortly after The Secret was released. So I didn't know that the church that I was going to was the Man in the Secret until I got inside. And I was like, oh, that's the Man from The Secret. But so it was packed. And so the people that I was with, they kept trying to like finagle and cut through lines and hang out in the bathroom. It was like, just didn't feel good. And I'm like, aren't we here to like have an experience about love and joy and God or whatever? And we're trying to cut through and get ahead of people. So that experience wasn't great. And and then when they said to stand up, I was like, I'm not standing up. I don't no. Yeah. Why is everybody smiling? Why are they so friendly? You know, just suspect because I had that old training that it didn't look the way that I knew it to look.
Right.
And then I decided, you know, I'm going to go back, and I decided to go on my own. So I think what was helpful was because it used to be so hidden that me going with those people showed me where it was. And then I went back, and I also at that time I had a customer who, because I worked in Beverly Hills at Neiman Marcus, and that customer is very entitled, and it was very stressful. But I always had this one customer who would come in, and she was just such a joy. And I was like, I don't know what I asked her. I don't think I asked her why she was so nice, but I asked her something. Oh, I know what it was. She brought us a calendar, and it said Agape on it. And so that was what planted the seed. Come to find out later, it was not the same Agape, but I was directed to the right one.
Directed to,
for me, not the right one in general, but the right one for me. Absolutely. And so that second time and then I saw the choir and I was like, gosh, they just bring people so much joy. I want to bring people joy. I want to do that. And then same thing, like within 8 months to a year, I was in the choir.
Yeah.
Right.
Seeing the choir that day, like, awoken something in me in the sense of like that feeling that I had when I was leading praise and worship back in the day, and being that channel for spirit and like you know, just being able to give from that space, and now being on the other end of the space from a receiving standpoint, I was like, oh snap. Like, I was holding a very powerful position.
Right.
And I need to get back to that. I need to get back to my place, you know? So get back to my place, my calling, because I really feel that that's where it is. Because there is a space in praise and worship. You just have to experience yourself. I can't explain it. It's just, you really feel like just the oneness. It's so divine. It's so divine. And to be able to like outpour from that, and the congregation is receiving. And, you know, when you're in a Pentecostal environment, that experience is very visceral. So you're hearing the shouting, you're hearing the screams and the worship, and then the praises and all of that stuff. So you know that the environment is stirred up, not because of you, but because you're being the channel to that. You know, and I recognize that in the choir. I'm like, oh, okay. It ain't about being famous. It ain't about the solo. It ain't about the song itself. It's about being the channel, you know, for the music.
Exactly. And a testament, and, you know, this is the second time I'll be giving Ricky Byers, then Ricky Byers Beckwith, now Ricky Byers, and Reverend Michael Beckwith, because they wrote songs that I don't even know how to explain it. It wasn't until I started singing their songs where I recognized that there were, I don't know if it was harmonics or frequency, probably frequencies that open, as Ricky would say this, they open a heart chakra. So I still get moved by gospel music also, but there's something different in the way these tones and chords that she would put together, along with the lyrics that were very simple. Where'd you go? I lost you. There you go.
Sorry, my bad.
Oh, okay. But there was just something rich about, you know, the feeling of that music. But you talking about, and now I'm going to go back to something that another guest said, Stacey Amon Yeldell, a friend of ours, who was a guest on here, and she talked about creative injury. And it sounds like that's what you experienced leaving the Pentecostal church, and then saying, forget about singing, I'm not going to do that anymore. Your creativity was injured. And so then you found a way to come back to it by coming to LA. Not that LA was to fix, but there was something that you could have a rebirth again by being here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, very right. Very creative injury. That is a good word to use, because we experience those things often and don't recognize that. And so if we can call it out for what it is, recognize it, and then heal it. Oh man. I mean, I think if I didn't heal any of that stuff, all the stuff that I'm doing now, I feel like wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't be happening.
Wouldn't have unfolded.
So one day you were singing a solo, and part of your bio was announced that you had gone to Juilliard, and I was like, what? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, no, we don't get to do, I think you said I didn't finish. And I'm like, no, you don't get to diminish that, because the acceptance part, graduating is also a wonderful part of that, but the acceptance is not easy. So what led you to choose that school? What was your process like for the audition, and what song did you sing?
Sure.
If you had to sing a song.
So Juilliard, in, you know, Capricorn strategic thinking, Juilliard was a business move. Juilliard was a business move.
I love it. That's right. And that's what it is for everybody. So it
was a business move for the resume. I wasn't even sure that I was going to get in, because when I went to Juilliard, I was already done. I had my Bachelor's of Science in Fashion Merchandising. Ooh. And then I had a 2-year conservatory at New York School for Film and Television, which was on West 19th, which is now called New York School of Dramatic Arts or something.
Okay.
SFT was the name back in the day.
Okay.
And so I did their program. I was working full time, so I did all of the acting program at that school. I did it all at night for like a span of 3 years. And then once I was done with that, I'm like, okay, let's go out on auditions, let's model, let's do acting stuff, book small things here and there, but it wasn't enough for me. So I'm like, all right, shall we go to school one more time? and let's go for what I should have gone from the get-go, voice. Right. And I looked at Juilliard, and the day program was just out of my budget. And I think Dad was tapped out already from from college years prior. So he's like, I'm like, Dad, I'm gonna go back to school. He's like, boy, you are on your own. I'm done.
I did my job.
It's like, I'm done. From kindergarten to college, he's like, I'm done. You're on your own. I'm like, all right. Yeah. So I looked at that and saw that I couldn't afford it. And so I looked at the Juilliard night program.
Oh,
thinking,
I did not know that existed.
Thinking that, oh, maybe the Juilliard night program would be less rigorous and I could get in. No,
it's probably more concentrated.
No, it was as rigorous, same strict guidelines.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna prepare. So I did. I prepared Amazing Grace just because that was just such an easy go-to. And because I know that sheet music in and out, it was an easy go-to. And then by that point, I was kind of out of practice with the classical arias. But one that I had in my arsenal was Franz Schubert's Ave Maria in Latin. Ooh. And the last time I did that, I sang that song was at a wedding. So I kind of still remembered notes and things. And so I worked on that. And I presented both songs and I got accepted. I remember being like crazy nervous the day of and like realizing like, oh shit, I'm at Juilliard. What the heck? Like what? You know, like the moment of realization, I'm here. And I'm about to go into this audition. I'm like, Tertulien, if you don't show them what you got,
what are we doing here?
If you don't work this out,
you
know, go home. So I went through it. I did it, and I got in. I got in and started. So I was there from 2008 till 2010. So
that's a good while.
Yeah, it was a good while. So the last program ended, I think, fall of 2010, and then the next one was going to start in 2011. But in between those years, I had come out to LA for a photo shoot in 2009. And I'm like, ooh, I kind of like it here, but let me wait till I'm done with Juilliard and then I'll move. And because I'm thinking 4 years, I should have moved out here in 2014, 2015. That was the plan. But 2011, I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. Yep. And I came out here. So, and I said goodbye to Juilliard, and you know, life in New York was not happening for me. Life in Connecticut wasn't happening for me. Like it was time to move on.
Right.
It was time to move forward.
Understandably so. Same here. So let's backtrack a little bit because you dropped a little nugget and then tried to keep it moving. So I'm going to come back to it. And you said that you went to school for, was it fashion design?
Fashion merchandising.
Fashion merchandising. What school did you go to?
Yeah. So I went to Takeo Post University. Oh, okay. In Waterbury, Connecticut. I had wanted to go to school for fashion design, and the idea was to go to Parsons, but you know, the church felt some type of way about me studying in New York, so I stayed home. Which was a mistake because halfway through my program at that university, they canceled out the fashion program.
Oh, wow.
They helped us finish so that we can graduate. But they had canceled out the program. But the plus side of it was, at least towards the end, they had connected us with working individuals in the business that, you know, this teacher would take us to Fashion Week. She would take us to shows that were going on locally. So I was exposed to, I remember Giselle Bundchen's first fashion show. Giselle, Brazilian Giselle, yeah. You know, or there's another sister called Jessica White, who's a fierce supermodel. I remember when she first started. You know, there's certain girls that I'd be like, I remember your first show, you know? And because being exposed early on with fashion. So yeah, those were interesting times.
Let's talk about that, because you labeled it as a mistake, but you know, the silver lining was, but it wasn't a mistake, because here you were in this small school. Of course, they were getting rid of that. But then you were still able to get your degree, but then get the exposure that New York schools probably would not have. They probably would have handpicked their favorites or whatever.
Right. You know, and again, the exposure, you know, you go into a situation and you have expectations. So I always have these sort of grandiose expectations.
Same here. I get that.
You know, so I was expecting, my God, you know, Ralph Lauren, and being in the back room and the sewing room of the Ralph Lauren house, and like walking through and talking to him, and you know, all these things. But that didn't happen. I was still happy with the experience, you know, for what was available to us. I'm grateful for that. But it was, you know, fashion program. I think we were all expecting high fashion. We were expecting more Fashion Week. Maybe a trip to Paris during the semester, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, but it's all good.
I get that too, because my parents left the Bronx and we lived in Yonkers. And when it came time for high school, I don't know where my mind was. Everybody was choosing their high school. And I thought, like, in public school, they just tell you where to go. So I'm thinking they're just going to tell me where to go. And everybody's like, oh, what school did you choose? And I was like, what are you talking about? And it was like, you have to choose a school, and all the auditions happened last week. What? Anyway, so when I found out that one school, which was a magnet school, oddly, it was, we were being bussed into a white neighborhood. It was a segregated school at the time. And, but they had a dance program. Now, I was expecting fame. I was expecting us to be outside dancing on the taxi cabs.
I love it.
It was not that. It was good, but it was not that. There was no hot lunch. There was no, but.
Damn.
So I understand what you mean about having these grandiose expectations, because I'm expecting Debbie Allen to come in here with an attitude and tell me to get in step. Better get in step, sister.
Blame the tube, man. Blame the tube.
That's okay, because I've been seeking it out ever since. Wait, I think it's turned on television. But I've been seeking it out ever since and finding it in other ways.
Good.
But now coming back to you, and you're talking about, you know, being downtown. What was the school you said? SFT?
SFT, for School for Film and Television. It was.
Oh my goodness! I went to the School for Film and Television.
Yeah, it was on 19th Street upstairs. That's
the first place I took a commercial class, because the owner, Joan C. I wonder if she's still alive.
Joan C.
Joan C.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the first commercial class I ever took, because I was like,
the Three of Us Studios.
That's
Three of Us Studios to School for Film and Television. Yeah.
And I used to intern in the office to get my little hours, but there was also some casting directors in there, so I would like bring them their mail or whatever. But I'm like, we definitely crossed paths.
We crossed paths.
At some point.
We had to.
So so then you went to Juilliard and then you left. So what brought you to LA?
So LA, well, the shoot that I had in 2009 was the kind of.
Because you were modeling?
I was doing some modeling, yeah.
Naturally,
so I had a photo shoot and came out here, and I'm like, oh, you know, if I'm going to be an actor and do the Hollywood thing, I might as well come out here. Right. But it was going to be a planned thing. It was going to be after Juilliard. It was going to be 4 to 5 years. And then just when I got back, I don't know, something about LA must have just stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I was also going through so much personally in my life, you know? And so, and I was alone. My folks were in Georgia at that point. And I just was, you know, I wasn't living authentically. I was still trying to find me. So, I think just in, also too, at that time, now that it's kind of coming back to me right now, I remember many nights of insomnia, of sleeping or being awake till 3:30, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. sometimes, contemplating life, wondering what I'm going to do. But the funny thing is, I would be up late watching all these shows about LA. It would be Basketball Wives, it'd be this show, it'd be that show. Everything was centered around LA.
No, you're so cultured. You're so cultured.
So I'm like, all right.
And I'm guilty of it because I watch them all.
Yeah, you know, that's that. What do you do at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
You watch VH1.
You watch Mess. Yeah, right.
You watch Mess.
Yeah.
You know?
For me, I watch Mess because I need to feel better about myself. So
yeah.
And it helps,
And,
but yeah.
you know, and I was spiritually aware at the time, but I wouldn't say I was like awoke quite yet.
Right.
But I was, you know, I just felt like I needed to be here. And I prayed about it, and I was like, Lord, like, if it's your will for me to be here, talk to me, show me, like, what up, G, you know?
Yeah.
Man, I had this weird dream where it was like, it was as if an invisible hand came from the sky. In the dream, I'm watching this, a hand come out of nowhere, rip out a piece of paper from my journal that I usually keep next to me in my bed, because I dream, I write stuff down. And on the piece of paper, the hand wrote David Kelsey. And after the name was written down, I wake up and I'm like, really? Like, what does this mean? David Kelsey, Who is this?
Like, what's that mean? Oh, you didn't know.
I'm like, what does it mean? So me, of course, using my brain, I go on Google. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll just start here. I'll look up David Kelsey. So I'm scrolling, and one David Kelsey is like a Yale professor. There's some random one. And then the third one down, because I believe in things come in threes, the third one down was David Kelsey, Los Angeles, California. I'm like, okay, actor, motivational speaker, or whatever. So I reach out to him. I reach out to this random stranger, and I say, hey, this is weird. Like, your name came to me in a dream. Based off of your background, you seem like you're a spiritual person, so you'll understand, like, I'm not crazy. I'm just trying to find direction and guidance. So can you guide me? Nice man. Writes me back, tells me, you know, that there are no coincidences and all of this stuff, and tells me about LA, tells me where I should go, what areas I should look at, who I should study with, acting coach-wise, like all of this information that I needed, like, this man gave me. So sure enough, I write everything down. I look into it. I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I need a job and I need a place to live. So at that time, I was working for Terry Lodge, which was part of, like, why is the name escaping me right now? Mario Batali Restaurant Group, those folks. And I was burnt out with the restaurant business by that point. So I was working for the market, because the restaurant had just opened up a little novelty market next door. So I'll work there. So I did that, and I talked to the owner, and I'm like, you know, I'm thinking about moving to LA and all this stuff. He's like, oh, first thing out of his mouth, he's like, do you need a job? And I'm like, biting my tongue, because I know in my head what the next answer is going to be. He's going to offer me a job at one of the restaurants in LA. And then unbeknownst to me, I'm like, yes, I need a job. He's like, okay, don't worry. I'll hook you up with my assistant in New York, and she'll connect you with the manager in LA. So I'm like, all right, cool. at this point, the interview has gotten set up. I speak to the manager here in LA here, and it's set up. Like the transfer is ready for me to go. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm booking my ticket. So I was at that time I was like living paycheck to paycheck. I had a little bit of money saved up.
Yeah.
So I used that money to book a room. I booked a room in a mansion in the Hollywood Hills.
You know what?
I needed that. I needed it. I needed to just
Everybody, I want you to know this is what I deal with is the majestic Tertulien. But go ahead. And I ain't mad at it. I'm mad that I didn't think of it, actually. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad that, why not think of that?
Listen, I was like, look, if I'm going to come here,
yeah,
let's come here big.
I love it.
So I rent a room in this mansion, Woodrow Wilson, that's the name of the street, right off the Cahuenga Trail when you are driving up the 101 North. And it was perfect because Mosa, which is on Melrose and Highland, it was all one line.
Yeah,
so I could take a cab. If I needed to walk, I would walk. It'd just be a straight walk up and a straight walk down, even if it took me an hour, you know? Yeah. So I booked the room for 2 weeks, and I had a job waiting for me, and that's how I got here. I flew here on a Sunday, and I started working that Thursday, and I purposely wanted to start working that week because it was Oscar weekend. So it was my first weekend in LA. I'm like, if I'm gonna come here, I might as well be in the mix right away.
Right.
So
that's called vision. That's called vision. That's strategy and vision. Yeah.
Strategy and vision. I had a plan, baby girl. I had a plan.
That's right. Yeah.
I had a plan. So I show up, like I said, I flew in Sunday. I start work Thursday. And that was my first weekend. It was Oscar weekend. And seeing Natalie Portman walk through there and Patricia Arquette and all of these people that I had seen on TV, are now in front of me. And I'm like, well, I'll be damned. You know, it was surreal. It was so surreal for me. It was so surreal. But then I immediately okay, I'm here, let's go. You know, let's go. Because that starstruck stuff went away
it's temporary,
it's very, very temporary. Because I was already kind of getting to that point in New York, you know, because when especially in New York, depending on what project you're working on, sometimes you'll work with someone that's big, or sometimes you know, you're at a restaurant and they're across the way. So you get used to it after a while. Yeah. But then when you come to Hollywood and it's everyone in a room, you're like, ah!
Yeah.
Oh my God, you know? And then it's okay, back to work.
Right.
You know? And then once you start working here, it's a completely different
there's animal. No separation. You're just really, they're just people.
Yeah. And the sort of the sort of wistful, longing feeling, or the dreamy feeling that I had when I was back home watching these shows and watching these films and wanting to be a part of it. It's not there anymore because I'm in it now.
Now you're here.
And it's real now, you know? So it's very real now. And so now that, and I'm sure you know this too with working, you work so much that you almost don't have time to keep up with what else is filming here, or even watch what else is filming here. Because sometimes I'll be out and people are like, oh, did you hear about this show or that show or this person? I'll be like, who? What? When?
Right, yeah.
I literally can't keep up anymore.
It's too much,
It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
I love the what I call divine order of things, you know, when we're
Yeah.
like you mentioned, you was like, I wasn't really woke at that time. I was still kind of like uninitiated in a way, but you
Mhm.
weren't. There was just probably a lot of like frenetic energy and noise around you. But the fact that
Mhm.
you had this dream, you were already writing down your dreams in your journal, and so you got this. So there was something that was open enough for you to
Right.
get this name, and open enough to then move forward to dig some more and then make the call, because that is something that I think so many people just don't um, hone,
Right.
is that in the intuitive thoughts come to us all the time, all the time,
All the
all the
time.
time. But if we're not receptive, then it kind of gets dull. So the more that we
It's
just
mhm.
bring it in and be like, oh, what's that? That thing came to me. Let me look that up. Let me take this next step. And then it leads to this whole journey that's just like a path that's cleared for you.
Right.
Um,
And
so
and
so
and
you had that.
right. And the thing is too, what's beautiful about it is that when something is really meant for you, if you're not receptive at the time,
Yeah,
there's still another way for it to come to you.
that part.
Because I had prayed about it on a Sunday
Yeah,
into a Monday, had that
yeah.
dream, and did all the things in between. And then maybe Thursday or Friday of that week, my mom calls me, and this at this time, mom's living in Georgia. The
Mhm.
first thing out of her mouth is like, "Are you moving?" That was the first thing. I'm like, "Hello." She's like, "Are you moving?" First words
Mhm.
out of her mouth. I'm like, uh, I think so. Like, how? Why? How do you know? Like, how do you know? And she's like, well, I had a dream. She's like, I had a dream that two men that were dressed in white, they were packing up their truck to move to Chicago. And she was like, I was walking down the sidewalk and they stopped me and they told me to tell my son that he needs to move to California. This is my mother having this dream.
Yeah,
So I'm
right,
like, okay, spirit.
right.
Thank you for the confirmation.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
let's go, you
right.
know?
And we can go
So,
into a whole other conversation of,
oh my God.
because first of all, Haiti, the connection to the divine, so rich.
Yeah.
And the practice,
Hmm.
everyone there is open. So it's
Yes.
not surprising to me that your mother could be on the other side of the
Um,
world and have this connection and this dream,
yeah.
just like you are, just like you accepted it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very rich.
Yeah.
Very,
But
very rich.
that's a whole nother conversation and
Yes, it
documentary and
is.
everything. So put that
Another
in your
day.
pocket and
Yes.
you create that.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
and so here we are. We're in quarantine. How have you been faring during the quarantine?
Woo! Quarantine.
Yes,
Oh, oh, wait.
it's
The
okay.
battery went crazy again. Okay. Quarantine has been interesting.
Mhm.
Um, I would have to say there are some elements that have shifted in my schedule in quarantine, and there's some elements have not. Like I'm used to working from home, so as
Yeah,
far as quarantine is concerned, like that didn't really change much for me. What changed was, you know, with the lack of the auditions and calls for that and that kind of thing, and then on
mhm.
the real estate side, the showings were just not happening.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
yeah. So there is a space of like, okay, like I'm home for real home. Like they ain't nothing to do, ain't nowhere to go.
Mhm.
We home.
Yeah,
So I started thinking of things to do and ideas that were kind of like sitting in my back pocket that I wanted to do, but just never had the time to. So
mhm.
I felt like, ooh, this is like a never ending recess. Let's play, you
Right. I
know?
love that
Let's
never ending recess. That's
yeah.
great.
I'm like, let's play. So the fashion stuff came into my head again. I'm always into fashion. I'm always, looking at stuff and
Yeah.
getting inspiration and that kind of thing. But I'm like, since I have the time and I have the funds right now, let's try to make something.
Mhm.
So I did. I'm not done with it yet.
Mhm.
With part of it being because there was some beadwork that I had sent out to India to get done for me. And they were in quarantine too. So that stopped production on my beaded trim. So I finally got that, I think in like the beginning of July. So, but things have kind of picked up for me again now. So I need the time to actually sew and like pin the new trim on. Cause I had started, I don't know if you remember some of the videos where I had pinned some beaded applique onto this like long black sequin piece that I was making, this beautiful robe. And this was like earlier on in the quarantine. So I kind of half started it. It just now needs to be finished so that I could move on to the next thing. But I've been, you know, doing the fashion thing. The quarantine has allowed us to take the music virtually. So I'm involved with this band called Astro Voyage. I don't know if you saw any of the clips.
I watch all of them. Yeah. How did the band come together? Did you reach out to them? They reach out to you?
Child, that's a story. I got stories. That's a story.
A quick story. A
quick
brief one. Yeah.
Really quick. Well, you've been singing with me the past couple of years on some of my stuff. You know, the DTLA, the Mint. You know. So I've always wanted to start a band, but you know, I've had many incarnations. Some have worked, some were just right for that time, but I wanted something long-term. So after our little show at the Mint, I kept reevaluating, how do I get a band going and get something solid, you know, solid members, solid rehearsal, that kind of thing. And long story short, on a night out with Chris on date night, we were in Studio City getting some gelato, and I'm talking loud and I'm talking about this idea and the whole thing. And the girl behind the counter is like, "Oh, are you looking for a trumpet player?" Because I was saying like it'd be cool to have a soul band and a whole horn section. Like I was kind of, you know, inspired by the whole James Brown, Earth, Wind and Fire vibe. You know how I do. So she's like, "Yeah, I have a roommate who's a trumpet player, and you should give him a call." I'm like, "All right." So I hit him up on Instagram. We meet up. I tell him my aspirations. He's like, "I got you." He's like, "I know a lot of musicians. I'm gonna help you get this together." Girl, not even 2 months passed by. The beginning of this year, he introduces me to this kid, Jason Faust, who had just come back from Valencia, Spain. He was studying abroad in Berkeley at the program there, and introduces me to Jason. I tell Jason my idea, and Jason's like, "Okay, I'm gonna help you. I'll help you do your horn arrangements. We'll pull some musicians," because I was gonna get ready to do my music reel, right?
Right,
So,
I remember that.
Yeah, gonna get that going, the whole thing. Then he tells me about what he's doing. And I'm like, hold up. This is so much in line with what I want to do. Like, what are we doing? So he put me on one of his songs. And ever since then, like, this collaboration just solidified itself. And everything that I was looking for in a band is right here at my fingertips. Like, I don't need to call this one and that one and that one and that one to reschedule. It's all under one, one roof because of this one conversation I had with my partner. It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. So Astro Voyage, the big electric orchestra, Jason Faust is the creator. The whole idea is to merge live instruments and electric, fusion in that regard. And also the purpose of the band too, in a way to give back, is to educate children who don't have means to music education.
Oh, great.
And yeah, it's really positive. And the whole Astro Voyage itself is a journey through the chakras. That's the inspiration of the band.
Wow.
So it's just all like came full circle.
I love it.
You know? And then the collaboration with Evan Landez of Groove Junkies at MoreHouse Records. I have to give a special shout out to Mijan Owens, who hooked me up. Yeah, our sister Mijan. Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's because of Mijan that I got connected to Evan, and we did the song, and I remember popping the song into the car parked in front of the Saban with Mijan, and we just like intended for the song to do well.
Yes.
And we held the intention, and it made it to I'm surprised, even though I wanted it to do well, but I released whatever expectations or whatever I had in my mind about quote unquote winning or it being something. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being number 1 on TraxSource. And I was like, look at God.
And that's the part. It's the intention, the excellence behind it, the talent, and then let it go. You're committed, but you're not attached. And then you take the attachment off, and then it can go in places that we can never even dream of it happening.
Infinite possibilities.
That's right.
Infinite possibilities. So this quarantine, yes, but it's allowed me the time to really do what I love in a more like chill way. Because before it's like you're here, you're there.
It was a rat race.
It was literally starting to feel like I was back in New York again, being here.
Yeah. Right.
Which I kind of don't like. But
same, I don't,
Yeah, I moved out here because I liked how like low key it was, and how chill and ease and like, laid back.
Right.
Now it's just, it's too much. But who knows? Maybe the quarantine has like leveled everybody
regulated,
out.
Right? Like a reset.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but we'll see. That remains to be seen.
Right. And what I love about California is that it's such a collaborative, I'll speak for Los Angeles because I don't know about San Francisco, whatever, but Los Angeles is such a collaborative county where just somebody is working at, what'd you say, it was the gelato shop and overheard the conversation. It was like, oh, hey. And we're so open to possibilities here where it's just like, that's where the divine order can do its most work. It's just hands off and
it's beautiful.
Allow it to be. Yeah,
it's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, look at our experiences in the choir in itself.
Yeah, right.
I mean, who would have thought that Earth, Wind, and Fire, what?
Singing for Maurice White. Yeah, Memorial. The Voice, Chaka Khan. I mean, there's so many things I can't. Yes. Yeah.
Remember the Art of Elysium that night with Stevie Wonder?
That's right. And Patti LaBelle.
I will never forget that night.
I'll never forget that night. Yeah.
I'll never forget it. Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Sweet Honey. There's just so many. Oh my goodness. Right.
Delicious moments. Delicious moments.
I call them majestic, sublime because they're just that.
They really are. They really, really are. And I look forward to many more.
Oh, completely. It's open now. There's.
Oh, yeah.
It's just going to be more. So before we go, is there anything that you want us to look out for? I'm going to put it in the links anyway. And I'm going to put all of the Astro Voyage. Well, Astro Voyage. And there was something else that escapes me now. Oh, you sent me the TraxSource.
Yeah, I sent you the TraxSource.
I'll put that in. Is there anything else that you want viewers to know about you before we end?
If anyone on the real estate aspect, if anyone's looking to buy or lease or invest in property, right now is a very opportune time to do that.
Okay.
And so I'm your man. Hit me up. We work something out. We work something out.
I love it. Tuli, thanks for coming through, man. In my head, you were supposed to be my first guest, but schedules didn't work out. But here we are now, and it's divine time, and it's all perfect. So I'm glad that I got to sit down with you, man.
It's all good. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be a part of this. And I really hope you keep this going. You're a wonderful interviewer.
Thank you.
But you're so easy to talk to as well, and
that's what I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm just like, so what are you doing? Well, how did that happen?
Right? Yeah, I love it. I love it. Keep it up.
I will. I will
All right.
keep it up. Be well,
All right.
Julie.
You too. I love you.
Love you too.
Take care.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Keep up with Tertulien on Instagram. He just dropped a new single, Keep Rising to the Top, on TraxSource, bound to make you dance. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. And I'll see you next time. Bye.